Hey, welcome back to ShredMentor Live. I'm your host, Jason Aaron Wood, and tonight we're going to be talking about how to improvise memorable melodies. One thing I need to pull up real quick, and I hopefully throughout this show, I don't run into as many streaming problems as I've been running into, because I basically have to reinstall my video card driver like every week, basically, just to get this to run correctly. So hopefully we won't have any lagging. It looks like it's running nice and clear. And go ahead and let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Looks like the guitar amp is coming through loud and clear. And yeah, all right, good. Hopefully, I mean, I see it on the meters, so let me know if you can hear that too. Good. Hey, Matthew. Good to see you. Hey, Scott. How's it going, man? All right. So good. It looks like we are actually functional tonight, which is great. And last week wasn't going to be a possibility either because I couldn't breathe. So I had some really nasty-ass cold. I thought it was the flu. I said it was the flu in the email. It might as well have been the flu because this this cold that isn't going away, or this cough, rather, it's a real pain in the ass. So I hope none of you got that. But anyway, let's talk music here. Okay, so I'm gonna just pull up a couple of notes here because I think I want to talk first here about. All right, so let's say you're tasked with improvising a strong melody. Okay, now as a guitar player, we kind of all have this habit of sort of reaching with our hands for certain sounds, and it's often very motor memory driven, and it's not the bad thing I think most people would imply that is, okay? But we want to take account of that and train our hands to do things that are more melodic. And specifically, what we're talking about tonight is especially memorable melodies. Okay, so before we can even really dig into that, let's kind of look a little bit at what makes a what makes a melody memorable. Okay, so the very first thing here is that it's slow enough to sing along to. Okay, so yes, this is a shred school, and I think this is super cool, you know. But you sing along to that. Go ahead, ready? Sing along. 1, 2, 3, 4. You kind of can't, you know. It's cool. It's a sequence of 6, and it's all sextuplets. It's 5 beats worth and all. I did it in A harmonic minor. Fantastic. It's not catchy at all because it's faster than most people can think. It's faster than your listener can think, and more importantly, it's faster than your listener can hum or sing, unless they have absolutely no inhibition or, you know, or anything like that, and don't mind feeling ridiculous trying to sing along to that, because that's what's going to happen. All right, so vocal melodies are on the slower side, and I mean, there are some phenomenal singers in the world, especially in like the world of like Arabic pop in particular. I'm going to go outside of the Western music world a little bit because I've heard things that are fast enough to be shred. But those are virtuosos of singing, though. So even still, your average person isn't singing like that. So your 30-second note stuff, that is not for becoming an earworm. That is not the thing that's going to be memorable. And I'm talking about catchy. When I say memorable, I mean catchy. There are going to be memorable, technical, highly virtuosic moments, and you'll remember them for the technical ability, sure, okay? But I'm talking about addictive melodies, okay? How do you create those? All right, so first of all, yes, they need to be typically, mostly at least, slow enough for the listener to sing along to, okay? 2, it would need to have it might need to have an interesting rhythm pattern, okay? The things I'm listing here, they don't need to all be. You just need to check at least one of these things, okay? It can be the most mundane-ass melody in the whole world, but if it has an interesting rhythm pattern, something about the rhythm and the way that it works against the rest of the music is interesting in some way, Okay, it could be just syncopated. It could just have some amount of rhythmic variation. So it could just be very straightforward, but it can kind of get a little staccato and predictable that way. Predictable isn't even always bad either, mind you. I think it's good to have some portion of what you're doing be predictable and then throw in the surprise. And that brings me to number 3 here, which is the melody may do something unexpected. And this is probably where the bulk of the different things that we could do, and probably where we'll focus the most of what we do tonight in this area, is doing something unexpected. Okay, and that could be, you know, like not reciting the scale up and down. Right? Yeah, I went up and down a little bit and kind of got random about where I changed direction, but that's not really a melody, you know. that's just all the same rhythmic value, and I never played a single note that wasn't immediately followed by a note immediately next to it in the scale. So it's sort of like just reciting notes. So doing something unexpected would be like, you know, not doing that. Okay, and that's, to be fair, when I said, you know, in the intro here, that this is what a lot of guitar players will do. We play from motor memory, and so if that's all you practice, is what your only version of scale practice and dealing with scales is to recite the notes in order, you need to stop doing that all the time. Start purposely doing something where it takes them out of order, and put on your composer hat a little bit more often and less just the guitar player hat. Okay. Number 4 is, well, it's sort of that it could be a memorable melody because of the underlying chord change. I know I've said this on multiple previous episodes of ShredMentor Live, and a lot of the time those oh holy shit moments in a song are probably not so much that killer note happened, but that note happened within a really awesome chord change. It could also be like a lot of the dynamics kind of changed, right? It just went from soft to hard really quick right at that moment. That could be, and again, this is actually just more unexpected stuff, but the harmonic shift, the melody itself might not actually be the home of, or the source of the cool, memorable thing. It could be the memorable moment in a song, and your attention is drawn to the melody, but it actually might not have been the melody that was so cool. It just depends on the specific situation. So any one of those 4, okay, slow enough to sing along to, has something interesting going on in the rhythm, it does something unexpected, and or it happens on an interesting chord change. All right, so we're going to deal with, well, I guess all of those things tonight, okay? But let's talk about getting out of the rote repetition, of the reciting of scales, okay? You can do anything, really, but eventually you're going to have to play a note next to another note. It's inevitable. I mean, if you only play wide intervals all the time, it's going to get a little unsingable, because that's another thing about, I'm sorry, I saw it, but I'm just going with my train of thought here. But as Mike says in the chat here, quarter notes and eighth notes. Exactly. It needs to be slow enough to sing. Now, going in terms of what's unexpected, throwing in a sudden wide interval is a great way to do something unexpected. If you do too much of it, though, because wide intervals are harder to sing. Doing an octave, that's sort of like the famously difficult thing, because no matter what note you sing first, going to a higher octave is going to shift you to another part of your voice altogether. Okay, so just that alone. Okay, it doesn't matter if we're all singers here or not. It just you enjoying music as a listener, no one else is around, you humming along. That's hard to do. Okay, you know, it goes back to the old Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? That melody starts at a G and it goes up an entire octave immediately, first thing. It makes it a little hard to sing well, right? But anything that jumps an entire octave, you're already kind of asking for trouble as a singer. But it can be, it's a really nice choice of a note because it's the same note, so it's a nice way to make it sound like you gave them a second note, but actually haven't contributed anything different to the harmony, because you're actually adding just the same note again in the melody, assuming it's the same chord. But a wide interval in general, you know, it tends to be harder to sing. It's a little less right next to each other. When you think about what defines our idea of our earliest ideas of melody as children, okay? Children's melodies tend to be, you know, notes that are all immediately next to each other, right? They're neighboring notes inside the scale most of the time, with the exception of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which astoundingly does start on a perfect fifth, right? Which is your ABC, so it sticks with us forever. But yeah, so that being the one exception, most of the other songs that we learn as kids are pretty much the melodies consist of notes that are all right next to each other in the scale. Sequences, yeah, well, sequences are there too. Sequences can and have been very, very catchy. So, for example, very, very catchy and actually not all that complex. Slow enough to sing to. Interesting rhythm going on. That's actually, it's not triplets. You know, it sounds like 1, 2, 3, 1, but it's actually E and a 2. It's rest on 1. It's actually 3/16 notes. It's 2, 3, and 4 of 1 beat, and then the downbeat of 2. So E and a 2, E and a 2. So interesting rhythm and slow enough to sing. And a simple melody, really. They're only thirds. They're not a huge interval, but they're also not immediate neighbors of each other. And they're also playing off of a strong chord change, which would be, in this case, which is basically C minor, G7. It's a 1/5 in harmonic minor. So it's kind of playing off of that. So we got 3 of these things going on, not particularly unexpected. In fact, it is made catchy by the use of call and response, in fact. Same rhythm pattern. So, in that sense, sequences. So, anyway, that's one of my favorite go-tos for catchy melody, because it's hugely famous, it's very strong as a melody, and we probably all heard it. Checking the chat here, I may not miss anything here. Clear, good. What about the concept of using odd notes in a scale as long as you don't end on them in your phrases? You can, but this is not... Okay, memorable maybe. Catchy depends on the note. You can always use... You can use passing tones whenever you like. It should be well chosen. All right, so for the purposes of that, hopefully you'll be able to hear this. I'm going to go to... I feel like being in C sharp today, so... Hopefully you can hear the note. Let me know in the chat. Hopefully you can, because I'm going to be playing along to that note. Okay. I'm using passing tones. I use 2 different passing tones in there. I wouldn't say that's the thing that made it particularly memorable. Not to argue. It's interesting. It adds an extra flavor you don't expect. But to me, that seems more like it's performing the task of giving me extra material, extra events that I can play within the rhythm. So it can contribute to the rhythmic side of things. I feel like the guitar might just be a bit louder than I want it, because I can barely hear that note. Let me just turn that down just a little bit. So it's food for thought. That's an interesting thought, because based on the criteria I gave you here, yeah, I mean, that would be doing something unexpected. It almost kind of fights a little bit with that 4th thing I said, as far as the interesting chord change, okay? Because I want to remind you that your melody is actually still part of the harmony. It's never separate from harmony unless there just is no other harmonic context. If there are no other notes playing at all and it's just your note, then technically you're not really playing against a chord anymore. Your notes are no longer part of a chord. They still kind of imply it. Okay? Even when you are playing, unless you're playing one note by itself, as soon as you play more than one note, the listener's ear is going to start kind of trying to piece together the puzzle of what is the root note. Not on purpose, not actively, probably not even consciously. But to some extent, if I just go, I'm going to change key on you here, but there. What's the root note? Inside your ear, you can kind of already hear. you kind of can hear the rest of that F minor sound, because I just went. So your ear can kind of piece together. Like, whether you do that melody in your head or not, you can hear sort of where everything else is just by familiarity with having heard minor keys before. So the listener can kind of hear the rest of it that way. And so just by going, unless you do something to clash with the listener's expectation, they've kind of already get the idea as soon as you play a second note, which is where the fun is, of course. Okay, so that's part of where I'm going with this too. Yeah, I mean, Mike, I think you actually were thinking outside the box, just in a different way than I meant to go with it today. So you're not wrong actually at all. That's actually that's kind of what I was thinking too. And that actually can, I guess one of the other things that I can say here too, is another criteria that can make something memorable. I would probably try to pair this with at least one of the other criteria I said here, but if it's played expressively or performed expressively. This does not need to be applied solely to guitar playing. Obviously, I am a guitar player, and you watching are probably all guitar players. But the melody itself doesn't need to end up being a guitar melody. Whoever does it, whether it be a singer or a violinist or whatever, it should be performed expressively, and that will add a lot to how memorable it is, because it'll make it easier to connect with it as an emotional phrase. And the human voice, probably most of all. So at least a reasonably skilled singer being able to perform it passionately is going to probably make it the most powerful thing of all and make it more memorable, especially when additionally, reinforced by hopefully relatable lyrics in some way, or something at least poetically powerful or something like that, right? So we have an extra added advantage when that instrument happens to be the voice, because we can add words and stuff too. But it's also the built-in instrument. We're sort of tuned into the human voice a lot, and so there's an obvious reason why the vocalist tends to get all the attention a lot of the time in bands that have them. So it's there's a natural it's the most expressive instrument of all, because it's the human voice. All right, so it's the sound of happiness and pangs of anguish and everything in between. So that's the one that's sort of it's our communication instrument as well. Anyway, though, whatever instrument is doing it should be able to do it with the maximum amount of expression. So your phrasing can make a difference here too. Okay, so I'm going to be using a combination of my voice and the guitar tonight, just because I still don't really have an ideal situation where I can self-harmonize. I didn't really feel like whipping out the keyboard and the foot pedal to self-harmonize that way. I just forget it. I'll just try to think really hard and sing different notes that I'm playing than what I'm playing on the guitar. All right, so let's talk a little bit about interesting melodies, okay? And they don't have to be complex, okay? In fact, I'm going to go with the minimalist way of approaching this tonight. Since I have my 7-string, I think I'll play around with like B and E as like B minor and E minor keys, okay? So one of the things that I like to do is use it's a technique called contrary motion. All right, and it's something that happens in dual harmony. You have a higher note and a lower note in your harmony. Okay, the kind of harmony where most people will get familiar with and often kind of just stop right there, which is where you end up doing like thirds all the time, is called direct motion. Okay, and what that is both voices move in the same direction, either up or down, by step or by skip. That is, by step would be the next immediate note in the scale, or by skip, that is by skipping over any number of notes. So it doesn't have to be the neighboring note, but it can. And both voices go in the same direction. They directly follow each other, hence direct motion. Okay? This is what happens when you take one melody, A, B, C, and you harmonize it with C, D, E. And you get, okay, I took the amp out of it so the distortion doesn't mess with it, but yeah. Right? That's called direct motion. Okay, it works. It's solid. It's a little bit predictable if it's the only form your harmony ever takes. So I tend to use it. Well, I use that mostly for really fast stuff. If I mean like when I'm shredding my ass off, then I'll use direct motion for the dual guitar line for a certain part, because for the most part it's just about the overwhelming nature of playing so many notes that the listener can't process them. This isn't catchy stuff at this point, okay? But the contrary motion would be kind of purposely doing the opposite in terms of the direction. So if one note goes up by step or by skip, the other note purposely goes down by step or by skip. So one note might go up one note in the scale, the other one might go down a perfect fifth. It just depends on what we're actually doing. So that concept right there is going to be important. And actually there is a third one, and I am going to talk about that too, because I want you to know all three options when you're harmonizing, because this is actually more about writing than it is about playing. I want these to bleed into your playing and your practice, but these are considerations for making strong melodies, and our whole purpose in doing all of this is to make good music. Okay, so we want to make sure our music that we generate doesn't sound like a bunch of guitar exercises. And the best way to do that is make your guitar exercises stop sounding like guitar exercises. Give them some musicality too, because you're going to get good at whatever you do all the time. So, okay. That said, all right, there is a third type of motion. We have direct motion where they follow each other. We have contrary motion where one goes up, one goes down. And you can't do that all the time. You're going to have to eventually go the same direction. And, you know, unless they end up multiple octaves apart from each other and they don't even sound like harmonies anymore. They're just like two completely separate, unrelated melodies. Just once in a while, still might be okay. But then there's a third one, which is called oblique motion. And that is where one voice goes up or down by step or skip, and the other note stays exactly the same. So you have something like E against B, and followed by F sharp against B. Okay? What happens is the B stays the same for both, and it's in a way it's reintroduced with a new context. So you end up having the E giving a context for the B. In this case, it's sort of the fifth, but it's in the bass. And then when I switch to an F sharp, the B gets a new paint job. It performs a completely new function by being the lower note of a perfect fifth. And so it kind of becomes the root note in that case. In the other case, being the lower note of a fourth, it actually became the fifth. E sounded and felt and functioned like the root note. So that's one example of oblique motion. Don't forget, another name for that is simply common tone, which is you basically reintroduce a note in a new context. All right, it's simple. It's a very simple thing you can do. Don't forget, you can play the same note again on the next chord, especially if those two chords contain that note. However, you can sometimes just play a note that is not in the chord, as long as it's in the key. It becomes a new chord, basically. Let's see. Like Frampton's, do you feel like I do as far as harmonizing with notes? Unfortunately, I don't know that reference. Possibly. What I kind of mean, though, when it comes to, what I mean is that I almost kind of said it in a second ago, but okay, so if I have an A, a C, and an E, okay, my A minor chord consists of A, C, and E. That's it. So if I sing an A, a C, or an E, all of them, it's all still A minor. If I sing a B, however, now it's an A minor add 9. Because even though my guitar played an A minor, all the notes you could hear together included a B as well. All of a chord is not just what you play on the guitar, it's what the listener can hear from where they're standing. So however many instruments happen to be contributing to that, if there's more notes than the three notes that make up the triad, or if you're playing a note from the scale that isn't in the chord, well, now it is, because you're playing it, right? So what I kind of mean is, if you're either playing a note that's in the chord, or you're playing a note that makes it a new chord. Okay, this is just based on there already being a harmonic context. Okay, so by doing that, I went to a G, and that actually kind of became a minor, basically just a 9. I played a B, which is purposely not in the chord, then a G, which is purposely not in the chord, but it's a 7, so it's not bad, it's not wrong, but I'm adding things that are purposely not in the chord. I went into the flat 6th on that one, the F. So during the part where I was singing an F, it became an A minor flat 6. All right, so you're, like I said, you're either playing a note that's in the chord or you're extending that chord to be another chord. All right, so whatever note, if you're playing a note that's not in the chord, now it's a new kind of chord because now it's in the chord, because if you can hear it and the other chord's playing, all of those notes together are now part of the chord. All right, just like a bunch of wind players in an orchestra, they can only play one note each anyway, but you get enough of them together, they'll playing however many notes they're going to play. What's that chord in the end? Because it's really about how many different notes can I hear at the same time. That's the chord. Okay, so it's not limited to what's what's on one guitar, and it can be really confusing because we spend decades dealing with chords by that limited definition, by playing multiple notes at the same time. But don't forget, you're not the only one in the band, and so when the melody creeps in, the melody is either part of that existing harmony or contributing something new to that other part of the harmony. Okay. I will try not to go into too many coughing fits. My cold is over, but the evil cough lingers on. So hold on one second, please. Sorry, folks. The ever thirst-quenching Coke Zero. I'm sure that's helping a great deal. Okay, so all right, I'm going to give some other melodic examples. Hopefully that kind of makes sense there. So Peter Frampton did this with a voice box when he would sing and played the notes at the same time, harmonizing them together. Okay. I've heard his name a million times, but that's somebody I need to actually check out his music, so I will do that. Now I have a reference of somewhere to start too. Do you feel like I do? I'll check that out. There's a good chance, again, I don't know the reference right now, so I can't say either way, but possibly so, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of demonstrate something with that contrary motion idea. Okay, I'm gonna basically let's see. I'm gonna start with a B minor, and I'm gonna kind of play off of that. It's just gonna be the power chord, but I kind of mean that, as far as B minor. So my note was an E, right? I actually went to a C. I did have this melody planned here. Higher up that would be. Sorry, cold voice. That was a little bit more linear there, but. So that's all right. So I'm kind of descending. I did a root, went down to the 5th, but my chord actually went up a half step. All right. So that was part of it. This was still part of the B minor chord. So my B in the chord went up to a C. All right, right, so it ends up being like, oh, didn't really feel that change coming necessarily. Especially, this is one of the things I like to use. I call it surprise Phrygian. It's hardly something I uniquely do, but it's a way that I've noticed that the Phrygian mode gets thrown in an interesting way in a lot of the metal that I like. Whereas you'll kind of just be, kind of messing around. You don't really. The idea is don't rush into introducing what second you're using. You can even introduce the regular major second of the minor scale. Oh, didn't expect that color, but it's still compatible enough. So the trick is to wait, and I call it surprise Phrygian because it's something that you kind of lay on them after you've sort of given them a taste of what sounds like Aeolian. And maybe it is just straight up Aeolian, like I did. I purposely threw that in there. I kind of use the F sharp on the way up, but then purposely, very deliberately threw in like an F natural, so that coming from E, it's like, oh, it's this sort of darker kind of color. So it's a way that you can kind of make things, set the stage for a note that works very well, but this is what I was saying, like maybe the chord change is interesting. And that's kind of what's going on here. All right, so that was an E minor example, but or I could have when I went down to the C, I played an A. So anyway, it's just going to come down to thinking about exactly how that note is going to land on the other chord too. So this is something that takes a lot of practice, and frankly, it's not something that, like, the current setup I'm using right now with my voice and the guitar is probably the traditional way, but I don't think it's the most efficient way. I would recommend using a DAW, a digital audio workstation, using something like Reaper, or I use Cubase personally, but using multi-track software and specifically using MIDI to program melodies with a virtual synth or sample instrument. Like a piano is a nice thing, but anything you have, because that is going to be the way that you can actually write a melody, see its shape go up and down or whatever, and then write another melody right there in the same MIDI window, just a little lower or a little higher, that plays off of the note, so you can see exactly how it lines up rhythmically. MIDI is the best tool for this. Okay, and this is actually how I develop my writing largely, by doing this kind of thing, because I use MIDI a lot just as a writing tool, as a way to kind of plan out what I'm going to do before I decide, to dedicate a great deal of time to practicing what I'm going to be playing in order to commit the final version to the recording. All right, so that's one of the things that that I do a lot. Is when I play a melody, especially these more singable type melodies, pretty much 100% of the time I'm already thinking about what chord would actually happen there, and a lot of the time the chord is actually the first thing I thought of. Right, so there's some things that I've kind of had. I have just a lot of experience playing over certain chord changes, and in fact, as you dig into, let's say, guitar practice tools. Oh, it's not there, is it? Never mind. Forget it. I tried to pull a fast one there, and never mind. It's not actually loaded correctly right now, so I'm not going to bother. Anyway, inside of guitar practice tools. Oh, crap. No, sorry. Brain fart. Lost my train of thought. Let's see. Sorry. I don't know what I was going to say there. Anyway. All right, I forget. I guess screw that thought. Okay. Anyway, the benefits of live. You're catching this in real time. Okay. Anyway. Anyway, yeah. There are. Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. That was it. One of the things that you'll find in guitar practice tools on my site, where I'm using the backing tracks now, is that the chord progressions, the backing tracks specifically that I put on there, are meant to get you used to playing over certain chord changes, not to give you a song to perform over. Okay, this is much more of a vocabulary development tool and a melody writing tool than it is like the kind of backing tracks like you'd find on YouTube. So yeah, sorry, that's where I was trying to go there. But anyway, whatever. You don't need to see that for me to tell you that, and I just took about 3 minutes of a brain fart to get there. Anyway, all right, so some of the interesting chord changes. I've done entire episodes on this before, specifically chord changes that don't happen in the same key, but where you are able to use melodies from one scale and sort of chromatically bridge them together into another one. All right, so like for example, I'm going to use combinations of the E minor and C minor scales. I'm hoping you can hear my voice okay over that. I didn't really do a sound check on singing and stuff like that. But anyway, this is something I've kind of done so many times on the guitar and stuff. But basically, I'm kind of playing off of like the third in this case. And I just... And it's almost like I'm doing E harmonic minor, but by the time I get to that, what would have been the raised 7, it's actually the minor third, and then I'll descend another half step because that's where the second is. So... Alright, I'm surprised I can even slightly hold a melody right now because of the way my throat is right now, but anyway, while it's working, I'm going to do it. Alright, so that's something that it's slow enough to sing. The chord changes under it are interesting, and I think I kind of like the melody, which is, it often takes this type of form, all right, because I've kind of thought through how I might work this out. You know, just descending, change chords there. Now it descends again. The same way, third, second, root, and then the note that would have been the raised 7 this time is the perfect 5th. Just keep kind of doing that if you want it, back and forth between those. All right, but that's kind of another example that the melody is very, very tied to that chord change. The chord change was the initial criteria. All right, so kind of wanted to give that sort of that example there too, because it really, that's an example of like the chords are doing most of the heavy lifting here. Not that the melody didn't have to get thought through too. But I'm very careful to be basically within a certain chord's harmony and careful about my melody to seem like I'm following a scale and make sure I'm pretty well resolved to the new key before I start moving on. So which is where you get the right, so notice I stop there. so I kind of stayed there. Once I got to that D sharp, or E flat in this case, because it's a C minor, then, you know, that was where I kind of stayed there, because I want to give the listener a breather. I'm like, oh shit, where are we? Like, I didn't expect that color, and so we want to give them something unexpected, but we also want to help it be singable. So that's why I used a small, very linear melody. So this is, again, the thing that's unexpected doesn't have to be the melody, and the melody doesn't have to be the thing doing the heavy lifting either. Okay, so anyway, I hope that kind of helps a little bit. Let's see, comments are lagging behind a little bit. I know they're always about 35 seconds. In fact, I think the video itself is about 35 seconds behind. Phrygian is my favorite mode. Second is mixed linear. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm a big Phrygian and Phrygian dominant fan. I kind of I've appreciated all of the modes though, because to me that's also a good starting point for this sort of surprise, it's a different mode than you thought kind of approach. And Mixolydian's a nice way you can do that, because you can kind of play off of like major and surprise, there's a flat 7, and it kind of works with everything. It works with Lydian, so yeah, major, 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 surprise, there's a sharp 4th, and so you get this interesting, like, mysterious sounding thing. Black Sabbath, Randy Rhoads sounding. Hey, look, Black Sabbath. I've had this shirt for 30 years. I got this shit in middle school, and I'm still wearing it because the holes are in the back, so you can't see that, and so I can just, you know, but they're actually minimal, which is amazing. Anyway, yes, Black Sabbath shirt tonight here. Is the key changing, or just changing a note within the key? Scott, I'm actually changing keys too. So I'm actually kind of playing back and forth between two harmonic minor scales, but 2 different keys. So that was actually going from the key of E minor to the key of C minor, back to the key of E minor. It's a key change, definitely, but the cool thing about it's a carefully chosen key change, because I'm changing keys to a chord root that would have existed in the scale, but it's not major like it would have been, because we, you know, in the classic metal, typically you would have that. You would already have a C chord in the key of E minor, but it wouldn't have been a C minor. So I'm actually making it a key change at that point. But yeah, and I mean, we can do a lot more with modes too if you want. We can even talk some more theory. I think I had a really good theory session a couple weeks ago, so we can kind of dig into individual ones. I think modes are one of the best ways to sort of like sample the flavors that are available. In fact, let's kind of do that right now. And I think, all right, so the 7 modes of, I'm just going to go with minor, because to me that's home base, but you have Aeolian, all right, and so like, I'll just stick with, I'll do minor, B minor now. So just playing off of like the minor add 9 will kind of give you that minor sound. Now the thing is, I haven't done anything necessarily to force this to be Aeolian, so I could be like, which is actually Dorian. So that was be more of a Dorian kind of sound, because I kind of switched chords right on that one too. This is all the same key, but the chord change within it. A 1/4 in Dorian would be kind of going from a minor chord like B minor to a major chord, which would be E major. It's actually the White Wedding. That's the exact same chord change, in fact. But anyway, but yeah. So it has overall a minor sound, but once you get there, it kind of lightens the mood. It's a lighter sound than Aeolian, which is kind of nice. Sometimes it can actually sound, I don't know, like to my ears, it almost sounds like kind of Celtic. It's a really nice thing. So let me Let me throw in the drones here. Just that sort of descending down from the root note, root 7, or root flat 7, major 6th, 5th. As opposed to Aeolian, which would have been so much more dire, dark, kind of desperate kind of sound to it. So that's just, you know, kind of an example. I think this is a really good way to actually, speaking of modes, by the way, practice 2 different scales that are one note off of each other on purpose. So, like I just said, Dorian and Aeolian, play different things with them, but purposely be deliberate about which 6th in this case. That's the difference between those 2. Things that are, you know which note they're actually different. So Phrygian and Aeolian, all right? So that would be the second is the case here. The flat second. Locrian's going to be another one, because Locrian is 2 notes off. Locrian and Phrygian are 1 note off of each other, though. All right, so like Aeolian, they both have a root perfect, a minor 3rd, and perfect 5th, a flat 6th, a perfect 4th, a flat 7. Aeolian will have the major 2nd. Phrygian will have the flat 2nd. Major 2nd. Minor 2nd. Right? That's the only ingredient difference. So you can actually, you know, you can mess around quite a lot and get, you know, again, within the context of the original root note here. Back to Aeolian. Still Aeolian. Phrygian. Phrygian. Okay, now that I'm on Phrygian, I'll go with Locrian. Locrian is like Phrygian with a flat 5. Phrygian would go here. Locrian so that's Locrian. Phrygian would be that. So it's hard to work with Locrian a little bit because you don't really get, not hard, but you don't get the 5th. There is no perfect 5th in there. So if I land there, you know, so I kind of raced past that whenever I hit an F note. That's the 5th. I can hit a minor 3rd, and I can hit a root. So in order to resolve the melody, I have fewer notes available within the chord tones. The 5th doesn't actually do that function in Locrian. All right, but yeah, that's a yeah. Jeff Loomis does ring a bell with that one. So yes, I'm sure he has used that. It's kind of a fun I don't often reach for it, which, like most people, I don't really reach for it, but it does have its own very unique and actually quite musical sound. Every mode is a scale in its own right. All right, so I'm just going to do everything with B now. All right, just for the rest of the, we got another 11 minutes. So I'll just do everything with B. What's kind of nice about doing this, by the way, this exact activity is actually one of the best things for developing your ability to do this. But let's go back to melody writing here, okay? I'll start everything from B, but one of the things with the drone playing, I think it's important to really drive this home. Purposely go out of your way to play the notes of the scale that you're playing in a different order than they occur. All right, and then also think about where the root, third, and fifth are of whatever scale you're actually trying to play, and maybe even withhold the sense of resolution, the melodic resolution. So don't resolve your melody right away, and that means go ahead and start on whatever note of the scale, but purposely hit non-chord tones. So I'm going to say them out loud as I do them. Okay, I'll start on a root note. No, I'll start on a fifth, and I think this will be. I'm going to use melodic minor, but this is going to be the fifth mode of it. So it actually, right? So just to kind of give you that sort of so kind of playing off of something that sounded very minor, but then resolving it back to something major. Playing off the minor sixth, flirting a little bit with the perfect fifth, back to the fourth. Like that. All right, and then resolving to its major third. All right, so that's one way to kind of do that. When you switch to a scale whose root is part of a chord, how do you know whether to play major or minor? It's a momentary decision, especially if it comes down to, well, it depends on if the actual note is in the chord, like it being played, right? So right now I'm playing to a drone, and there is nothing but B playing. So there are no fifths, there's no thirds. I purposely made these tracks so that there is no other ingredient whatsoever but one note in multiple octaves. So I actually am free to go wherever I want with this during using this tool. So I can go major, or I can go minor, because I have complete control over coloring that emotion in whatever direction I want. If, however, someone is actually playing, that, and there's actually, if the third of the chord is present, then I need to stick with a scale that has that. So if it was a B minor, then I need to stick to B Aeolian, B harmonic minor, B Dorian, B Phrygian, B melodic minor, B Hungarian minor, something that has a root, a minor third, and a fifth in it, because otherwise whatever I do is not going to work very well, and it's going to be very clashy. And I'm not talking about the bluesy way of using that, where you might have like a major chord playing in the background and you're sort of using minor note, like minor thirds in your melody, because a lot of the way that you're going to typically do that kind of thing would be like so you're hitting a minor third, but you're also often raising it as much as a half step, so it's becoming a major third. So not referring to that particular usage of it, but yeah, it kind of depends on whether the actual third that makes it a minor chord or a major chord is in fact audible. Because if it is, then I need to factor that into what I'm playing and make sure that when I do hit that scale degree, that it's the correct type of third. So hopefully, I hope that answers your question. I hope that's what your question was aiming at, actually. So yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah. Yes. To me, it does, because those are the types of sounds that you want to avoid, is accidentally playing the wrong third. But because there isn't one here, and that's exactly why this tool has this going on here, so that you don't really have anything to interfere, and I could do any scale I want. Can I use triads and tritones for harmonies? Okay, so, well, those are two different things. Triads I'm using constantly right now for harmony, so I'll use just the minor scale right now. Root 5th, 4th, 6th, 2, 5. I haven't hit the 3rd yet, but I'm 3rd. 5, 4, 7, 5, 1, 5, 7, 6, 2, 4, 3, 5. Every time that melody sounded like it was at home base, it was because I was using a triad. Because the root, the 3rd, and the 5th are the notes that those are the notes that are going to make your melody actually resolve. So when I was saying stuff like purposely withhold the resolution, I just mean hold out on landing on the root 3rd or 5th for as long as you can. All right, so if I go back to that, that would be something like... There, resolved. All right, I went back to the 5th, but 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 7, 7, 7, 6, 6, 5, 4. I hit a 5, but I did it really fast, you know. 2, 4, 5. Now it feels resolved. So I hit anything but a 1, 3, or 5, and kind of made my melody just that's what you get, listener. Basically, you just kind of force the listener to just wait, basically, because you're not out of key, you're just not resolved. It's a building, it's an experiment in building tension, an exercise in building tension, I should say. It's not an experiment, because I knew how that was going to go already. I was demonstrating it. All right, but that's sort of how you can do it. Now, a tritone, however, I think the best way to do it is look at all of the different places where that flat 5 or sharp 4 actually exists. So, you know, I have a B. So, tritone gets its name from whole step, whole step, whole step, or 3 whole tones. So, we already did one of them. That's the Locrian mode, where you have it as a flat 5. Technically, it is not a tritone at that moment, because there's a perfect 4th and a flat 5. So technically a tritone is just a sharp 4, but anyway. Now on the other hand, there is also the sharp 4. Which could be a couple things. That could be Lydian. It ends up pulling to a note that is resolved, though. It's an automatic dissonance, so it's a very quick way to immediately arrive at tension. That would be the stronger note to pull to. But I could also... It's a very major kind of sound. It's basically, that's what Lydian is. It's major with a sharp 4. So I like to sort of introduce the flavor of Lydian sometimes. I mean, it depends on how much I want to leave the listener sort of in the dark. And ready? It could also be Hungarian minor. So you have a lot of flexibility because that interval actually occurs in different scales, and you can get different kinds of sounds. So yeah, you can actually do that just fine, and that's how I like to use it, in fact, too. So I mean, usually those last two are the two that I do. I don't really deal too much with Locrian, although I probably will at some point, because it's sort of an unexpected sound because of the fact that so many people do avoid it. So you do end up having, but anyway, I really like the way that it works with a perfect fifth. So treating it like a sharp 4, whether that's in Hungarian minor, which is basically harmonic minor, but instead of just a raised 7, is a raised 7 and a raised 4. So that's Hungarian minor, sometimes referred to as double harmonic. Same difference. 1, 2, flat 3, sharp 4, 5, flat 6, 7. That is the 7 of the major scale. So that's basically that's the scale. So you end up having 2 different intervals that are a step and a half. Step and a half to 4, half step, another half step, step and a half again to the 7, and then half step. Right, so yeah, you have some very cool sounds available that way, but put it in a context. That's what I would say. I mean, choose what key you're actually going to be doing that from. What kind of where is this happening, so that you have a clear idea of what the other ingredients are that you're going to introduce, and so you also have a pretty clear idea of how you're going to get there. What path are you going to take to that note that does finally resolve your melody? On that note, the tritone could be introduced in the melody. All right, so. In a different way, all right? So I'm going to use that same scale. I'm going to play the fifth in my melody. All right. So that's a kind of a fun one because it's almost like playing off of Hungarian minor, which I sort of am. Against a B. Moving up a whole step to a C sharp, but that basically goes from being minor to sort of a major third. So I'm kind of actually just treating it like an actual major chord. It would actually have been, I think that actually would have been a, let's see. Yeah, it would have. I'm doing a major, but it actually would be a flat 5 chord at that point if it was truly Hungarian minor. So I'm actually just treating it almost like a 4/5 progression in a different harmonic minor scale. So it's almost like B. Let's see, that's the 4. It's like almost like I'm in F sharp harmonic minor. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm missing some stuff here. I think he's something I wasn't sure of. Scott's got to go. Hey, man, I'll talk to you probably Thursday. I'll see you on Thursday. So, thanks for stopping by. Sorry, brain fart. I wasn't prepared for human interaction. Anyway, it's actually time for me to get going because it is after 9 o'clock now, and my alarm didn't go off. So, okay then. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, this is a big topic, and there is a lot to cover. So, I hope that I at least scratched the surface a little bit and kind of gave you some food for thought. But notice again that one last thing I want to drive home though is, again, get out of the habit of playing your scales up and down all the time. Purposely, if you have access to guitar practice tools, use it. Use these drones. That's what this is for. But get in there and purposely pick a root note. Let's see. I'll do some C sharp now. All right. So I'm going to pick a C sharp. Change the order of your melodies, purposely use notes that are not next to each other. use bits of arpeggios if you want to, but just get out of that. And eventually work your way back to one of those notes that is in fact in the chord, right? But that is one of the things that I want to leave you with, that thought, because just get out of the order that the notes are in the scale, and stop playing them in that order, because that's going to be the first step in making your melodies more interesting, and that is going to be the first ingredient in making them likely to be more melodic. And of course, I'm doing stuff without any kind of rhythmic structure right now, so having there be a beat playing, which if you're using guitar practice tools, you can just load the beats in a separate tab and hit play for that, and you can kind of practice playing over that particular note within that scale. So it's like playing over the chord of that, and you can practice over and over. So it doesn't always, don't just do the root note of the key. I know that's what I did tonight here, but you know, I'll leave you on A, but I'll play it as A Lydian, so that it's like I'm in C sharp minor. Just one final option here. All right, so again. So I did resolve it, you know, but you know, that would be like playing over the 6th chord in the key that I'm in. All right, in this case, that's what Lydian is the mode number 6 of minor, and it gives you a chance to sort of play off of other chords, which, let's not forget, all those other chords that are going to happen in your key are going to be part of chord progressions that you encounter in whatever key you're in. So don't forget the other 6 chords in your key. But that's exactly that's what this tool is for, and in my opinion, it's definitely one of the best tools outside of your actual own recording software, where you do the same exact thing but with a lot more freedom to use your own ideas. With that said, though, I'm going to go for this week. I'm glad to see that out of all of this time, I have dropped 0 frames. I just know I just have to basically uninstall my video card every week and do it again right before the show, pull my hair out, and everything runs great. So now I know. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me, and I hopefully won't have any problems for next week. So I hope to see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m.